Hi everyone, welcome to this new session of Equity for CFA Level 2. Today we will be covering the remaining portion of our reading from discounted dividend valuation. So in the previous session we covered three very basic approaches, started with the fixed holding period model, then we moved on to the Gordon growth model and we finished it up with the preference share valuation. Today we'll be covering three more models, again one of which or even two of which you're fairly familiar with at level 1. So let's start right away with the next approach. A two-stage model. Now, two-stage model is something that you've already done in a brief manner or rather in detailed manner at level 1. In fact, two-stage model was the sort of most complicated question you could get at CFA level 1. So the equation goes something like this. P0 is D1 upon 1 plus R, D2 1 plus R whole square, so on Dn plus Pn 1 plus R to the power n. Now, those who are keen observers among you, you would have noticed that this is the exact same equation we had in our first approach of fixed holding period. That is correct. The equation is exactly same. The only difference is over there I made you guys identify this, that this price is known as terminal value. This terminal value in a fixed holding period model would always be provided to you. It is something that is given to you. But here in a two-stage model, this you will have to calculate. So Pn is calculated as Dn plus 1 R minus G. Now that equation, this is nothing but the Gordon growth model. In Gordon growth model, we had P0 and we used D1. It's the same logic. If I need price of time n, I'll always take dividend of 1 year ahead. So just that logic. Now the whole concept behind two-stage model is fairly simple. Two-stage model says that a company cannot have a constant growth. So if I look at the Gordon growth model, it was saying that the company would have one constant growth rate throughout, which is not realistic. So two-stage model is saying that a company can experience two different stages of growth. Initially, when the company is into a new business or a new industry, they might experience initial period of very high growth. And as they move along, as they mature as a company, they will experience a stage of constant lower growth rate for maybe perpetuity. So instead of taking just one constant growth rate throughout the life of the company, this model is saying that if I show life and growth, it is saying for initial years, the growth would be slightly higher and then the growth would stabilize for perpetuity. Now, if you refer to any of the curriculums or other study material, they have given notations for these growth rates. So this is known as GS, basically short-term high growth rate. So the growth rate that would exist for a short period of time, the higher growth rate, that is GS, and the stable growth rate, the lower growth rate that would exist for a longer period of time is given the notation GL. With the concept out of the way, let's do an example to solidify the ideas further. So a fairly basic example. A company paid $20 dividend last year. Growth rate is expected at 10% per annum for first 2 years. And then stabilize at 3% per annum. If cost of equity or required return on equity is 8%, calculate P0. So this is the example. One thing before we do the example, if you want to know the notations, then this is the long-term growth rate over here. And the way we calculate these dividends is fairly basic. You have D1 as D0, 1 plus short-term growth rate. Then D2 would be D1, 1 plus short-term growth rate. Basically, you don't have to focus on short-term or long-term in an arbitrary manner. Rather, just think logically. The dividend is being given in second year. If second year has the short-term higher growth rate, we'll use that. In our question, the stable rate is starting from third year onwards. So when we have to calculate D3 in our question, we will use growth of long term, because in the third year, we are no longer having this 10% growth, we are having only 3% growth. So if you want, you can use these equations. Otherwise, my suggestion is just use your common sense or just common logic, that if the dividend is for a year which has high growth, we'll use that growth rate. If the dividend is for a year which has lower stabilized growth, then we'll use that lower growth rate to calculate the dividend. So with all that done, I would suggest pause the video and give this question a try. Now let's start solving the question. So we have, firstly we need D1. D1 is D0 into 1 plus growth rate. Then we have D2 as D1, 1 plus growth rate. Second year also the growth rate is 10%, so we'll use that. And D3, the growth rate is only 3%. So we'll use this. This will give you a value approximately 24.93. I'm just approximating at 2 decimals, but if you have higher decimals, I will just take that. Now that I have all of these values, the next element that I need is P2, because we always calculate price at the end of the short-term growth phase. So the n in this equation, this n simply denotes for how long my short-term high growth phase is going to last. In our question, this 10% raise is going to last only for 2 years, so n becomes 2. So we need price at the end of second year. This would be D3, required rate being 8%, so 0.08, minus growth rate 0.03, and this value can be plugged in for D3. Now that we have all of these values with us, all we have to do is simply plug them into this equation and calculate the present value. So a fairly basic technique. Just plug these values in the cash flow series. So C01 would be 22, C02 would be 24.2 plus 498.6, because second year we'll have dividend and we have the terminal value as well that we have just calculated. After that, go to the NPV series and put I as 8. Then you can compute the NPV. When you solve for all of this, you'll get price right now, or the intrinsic value right now, as 468.59. So all of these values are approximations because I have only taken 2 decimals, but ideally you should be taking 4 decimals for more accurate calculation. So if you're getting slightly different answers, it's fine. So I hope that example has clarified the entire approach and the concept that we are dealing with. That is the two-stage model. Now, based on the concepts of two-stage model itself, we have one more model which is just adding one more thing. It is saying that you don't have 2 growth phases, rather you have 3 growth phases. Calculations, principles, everything exactly same. So let's look at that approach now.